I certainly found Alteryx Weekly Challenge 220 a challenge when I first attempted it. I think that this step here is what threw me off completely, because there are 7 different fields and kind of the only way to sort it out is to manually do lots of if, else, ifs. So I know that personally I attempted this challenge once and tried to do it through some kind of logical way of using the spatial tools, but got so frustrated and gave up and left this challenge for quite a few weeks actually. But here I am back. I may have had a sneaky peek at the wonderful Hannah Nikowska's solution. I will leave a link to her. She's done all the Alteryx Weekly challenges, so she's amazing. And I may have actually stolen this formula tool from her to get me started again on this challenge. So basically, you're manually looking at the map. If I stick a browse tool in, then we can actually see the map. Having it on the satellite feature is actually the best way to do that, because you can see the hedges. Anyway, it's just a case of manually seeing those points and deciding which fields to assign them to. So, you know, this one is field 1, this one is field 2, and sort of clicking here to highlight, you know, which points they correspond to, etc., to work out this step. I personally, my solution is available on the Alteryx community if you want to go find it and download this workflow to just steal this formula tool as well. So that leads us to have all these lovely sort of, you know, you've numbered the corners 1 to 4 or 1 to 5, you know, because there are different numbers of corners where they're not all rectangles, they can be different shapes. So then we've got all these nulls in there that we want to just transpose down into one column and filter out all those nulls. So then we've got, if I just filter sort these, in ascending order, then we've got field 1 has corners 1, 2, 3, 4. And there you go. Now we can get on with the actual challenge. So first of all, I built out those polygons. Let's get another browse tool in here. And then you can see that we've got our beautiful 7 fields now. If I click on them, you can see them highlight in turn. Lovely. Now, from here, my first step was to work it out as a whole farm. So I wanted to combine all of these fields into one. If I just switch the allegiance of that browse tool to connect to the summarize tool, then you can see that we have one spatial object now. So that is the whole farm. So we can use the spatial info tool to get our area in square kilometers and the length in kilometers. And that, if it just a little bit of renaming, gives us our first 3 fields. Now we can work out the same information for each of the individual fields, similar process, and then just renaming them. Wonderful. Now the trickiest bit is to then get the perimeter, the length of all the hedges. So if we just added together all of the all of the perimeters of each individual field, obviously we'd be double counting some of the hedges. So how do we go about avoiding that problem? So my solution was a bit roundabout, to say the least, but I thought if we sort of do a similar process where we name each of the edges, then we'll at least be able to see which edges then have exactly the same length, and we can filter out those duplicates. So I thought that to make those edges, obviously you're going to need to be able to join back to the first point in the square, for example, of the field. So I filtered out so that I just had the first point of each of the fields, and I found out what the maximum value, how many corners this field had, basically, so that then I could join those together and add these 2 columns, so that then that would become like an extra corner, even though it's joining back to the first point. So it just kind of makes sure that you can have each of the edges in that field. So sticking that back on with our data, then if I just sort those again, then you can see what I've done. Oh, I've sorted them the wrong way, but you understand what I mean. I'll go down to field 1 just so that you can see. So you've got the first corner, then the second corner, and then you go up to the 5th corner, this imaginary 5th corner, which is actually equal to the first corner. Hopefully that makes sense. Now it's just a case of doing a similar thing where you're labeling each of the edges. So edge 1 is point 1 and 2. Edge 2 is points 2 and 3, etc, etc, etc. It doesn't really matter what values you put in here because we're not really going to use these values. So that's all well and good. As we go through that, then we do a similar transpose, get rid of all the nulls, and then we concatenate together our field name and our edge name. So then we've got like field 1, edge 2, blah, 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 so that we can do our poly build again, grouping on the field edge column and sequencing by the value. So if we see here our value, the first value that we have, which is the field number, it's not the field number, it is basically just telling you, yeah, the order of the corners, so it joins in the right way. Yeah, so if I show you how that works with a browse tool, drag that out, then you can see all of the, I mean, it's going to look exactly the same as before with all the fields and the lines drawn, but if I click, say, on an edge here, then you can see that, for example, field 1 edge 2, which is this one here, is equal to field 2 edge 4, if I can find that. There it is. So yeah, you can see that nothing changed in the highlight of the field edge there because they're the same edge. I tried to do a unique tool on just the spatial object, but that didn't work. So we'll calculate the length of that hedge first, and then use the unique tool, and you can see that we get these 9 records drop out. So now we just have to sum those all together, and it's just a case of appending them to the correct fields. And we have our solution all built out. So I hope that helped if you were struggling with this challenge, and thanks for listening.